My name is Melissa Sullivan. I am the Regional Sport Consultant for the Valley Region for Sport Nova Scotia. I am also the Chair of the Shattering the Glass Committee and a member of the Valley Female Leadership Network. I'm a trained Canadian Women in Sport Leadership Workshop facilitator, an athlete, a board member, and like many of you, a female leader here in Nova Scotia. I am so honored to be the MC for the breakout sessions for Shattering the Glass and excited to learn more about and hear more about from our presenters today and in the coming weeks. In addition to Sport Nova Scotia, I would like to thank the following partners who have helped shape this extraordinary event: Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, Support for Sport, and the Government of Nova Scotia. I would also like to thank the Valley Female Leadership Networks and the two other female leadership networks across the province. So we also have South Shore Female Leadership Network and Fundy Female Leadership Network. And as I mentioned previously, this is the third year. And so the first year South Shore had hosted in Bridgewater, and last year Fundy hosted in Millbrook. So this year Valley Female Leadership Network has been working tirelessly to pivot as the theme is for 2020 and to continue this important conversation in our virtual setting. And before we kick off the session, I wanted to highlight the initiative called Resport. Resport is a program designed to test ideas that have the potential to make sport more accessible to everybody in Nova Scotia. So regardless of your age, your gender, your income, your race, where you're located, your community, we want to ensure everyone in Nova Scotia can access sport and stay active throughout their lifespan. If you have an idea of how our province can make sport more accessible, whether you're in Barrington, Windsor, Oxford, Muscatawbett, Truro, or Membertou, you can submit your idea by visiting the website as you can see on the screen there. We also are on social media and we have a Facebook page as well. And also through this virtual conference, we encourage you and invite you to share your experience on social media. And we've created a couple hashtags so we can kind of track some stuff. So we have 3 up there. And if you have missed or have any questions about any of the sessions, please do connect with the email address on the screen there. On behalf of the Shattering the Glass Committee and our partners, I would like to acknowledge that our offices are located on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are aware that there are participants joining from all over and potentially outside of Mi'kma'ki, and we welcome you to share where you currently reside, and you can populate that in the chat if you would like to. As a reminder, during the session, if you could keep your camera off and mute yourself, change your name, use your name to your full name so you can get a locker credit, which Kirsty will ensure. Direct any questions to the chat box or wait until the end to speak aloud. We have renamed some of the Shattering the Glass committee members to Shattering the Glass host if you're experiencing any technical difficulties or would like to submit any questions anonymously. And please, as Kirsty mentioned, there's a pretty high demand for Shattering the Glass. So if you have signed up for certain sessions, please do attend only those sessions. And we do invite and encourage you to actively participate in some polls throughout today's session. And just a reminder that this session is being recorded and it will be posted on Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic's YouTube channel, and you will get an email after the event as well. And keep an eye out for on Eastlink Community TV, as there will be some highlights from Shattering the Glass. So with that being said, before we kind of introduce our panelists for today's session, we will be launching a poll. So within this poll, if you could identify your role within recreation and sport and where you are from. And it doesn't necessarily have to be one role, because I recognize many of us wear many hats. So please identify if you do have multiple roles. Perfect. So the poll results are in. 59% of people participating today are coaches, which is fantastic. We have some athletes, a couple parents, board members, sport administrators, quite a few from the central region, 49%, 24 from the Valley region. That's so fantastic. Great. Thank you for participating in that. So without further ado, I would like to invite you to our session today about exploring leadership, grassroots, and beyond. And so we have three panelists here: Lynn Wagner, Selena, Davidson, and Michelle Aucoin. So I'll share a little bit about each of our panelists who have just popped on your screen. So our first panelist is Lynn Wagner. Lynn is a human resource leader who specializes in employee relations and communication. As a coach, her energy, work ethic, and engaging personality creates an environment that is positive and fun. Lynn is a graduate of Mount St. Vincent University with an advanced major in psychology and minor in sociology. She holds an advanced diploma in human resource management from the Nova Scotia Community College. Welcome, Lynn, and thanks for joining us today. Our second panelist is Selena Davidson. Selena is a physical education specialist on the South Shore Regional Center for Education. She has received the Lieutenant Governor Award for Teaching Excellence and the National Physical Education Award. She is a strong advocate in schools to give all students a place to play, with a focus on female participation and outdoor education. Welcome, Selena. And last but not least, we have Michelle Aucoin. Michelle is the Director of Provincial Services with the Communities, Sport and Recreation Division of the Nova Scotia Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage. In this role, Michelle is responsible for leading a team of staff who support the provincial sport, recreation, and physical activity delivery system in Nova Scotia. Michelle is currently a co-chair for both Federal Provincial Territorial Sport Committee and the Federal Provincial Territorial Women and Girls in Sport Working Group. In addition to her professional role, Michelle has spent a great deal of her life coaching volleyball, where she spent 5 years as the head coach of St. Yves's women's volleyball team. Michelle also has represented Canada while serving as an assistant coach with the junior women's national team, and has proudly represented her province coaching Club, Provincial, and Canada Games team. In addition to her coaching experience, Michelle has served as the assistant chef for Team Nova Scotia at the Canada Games on multiple occasions, and is looking forward to her team lead role with the national women's softball team at the upcoming Olympics in Tokyo. Welcome, Michelle, and thank you for joining us. So I am so honored and privileged to moderate this panel of influential female leaders that we have joining us here today. And before we dive into the questions that I'm going to ask, I wanted to open the floor to the panelists to share a little bit more about yourselves, kind of more about your leadership journey and what got you to where you are today. So we can start with Lynn and then head over to Selena, and we'll end with you, Michelle, on your storytelling. So I'll turn it over to you, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to certainly share my experience. Uh, I think I started in sport at a very young age in elementary school, and that is probably the key driver which has shaped my leadership style. So I've worked in human resources for over 20 years. I joke and say I started when I was a mere child. I continue to play soccer, I continue to coach, and I'm an active board member as well. So I think from a young age, being told that I was going to be playing sports by the principal of the elementary school that I was in certainly shaped my pathway to where I am today. And I think being very active in my community, being involved in sport at a young age and through my adulthood, gave me skills to work with others, gave me the skills to communicate effectively with others, um, in a relatively competitive way, and then getting into business. So working in human resources, you have to learn to communicate effectively and work well with others, and that's been my strength. So for me, I think I've been exposed to many great leaders, mentors who have given me feedback, what I would call constructive feedback, to help to shape my leadership style. Given those opportunities to develop and to grow and to take risks to learn, maybe even provided the opportunity to fail, to learn from my mistakes and be able to share what I've learned with others.
Fantastic, Lynn. The early influences has shown to be such a key piece in encouraging girls' participation, not only in sport, but in leadership roles. Before we jump to you, Selena, I just want to remind participants that within their video settings, they can choose to hide non-video participants, so you're only seeing the four of us on your screen. So just a friendly reminder there. Okay, Selena, why don't you take it over with your leadership story? Oh, you're on mute.
A lot of people like that I'm on mute sometimes. My leadership story is mainly involved through my teaching experience. And I guess I've always told my kids to find something that they love that they can do and that they can do it throughout their life. I like to think that I lead by example, being a coach, being a player, and also being physically active. I'm very passionate about what I teach, and providing extracurricular activities for all students in the school. I've been teaching for 24 years and I've been at Bayview for 18. Some of my accomplishments that really stick out for me in my leadership world, when I was in the Valley, I taught for 6 years in the Valley, and I really wanted to play summer soccer, but there was no senior women's soccer team. So I played on a men's team for a summer, and that was very eye-opening. But then that following year, Pat and I decided that, you know what, we want to get a senior women's league started. So we had 2 teams in the league, and now that league has grown over the years and there's over a dozen teams, which means there's a lot of females playing soccer. 16 years ago when I came to Bayview, there was only a co-ed elementary soccer team. And that's when Soccer Nova Scotia was making their transition to females, like having their own team. So we decided as a school, even though we got a lot of backlash from the traditional coaches, they're like, no, we only do co-ed here. And so 2 of the schools, we decided, no, we're going to do a female league. And if people would like to join, they're more than welcome. And that league has also grown. I think this is probably my biggest accomplishment in the school sport world is when I was district coordinator for the Nova Scotia School Athletic Federation. Ron O'Flaherty had asked me to do a pilot project for the special athlete competition for track and field. And that competition was over 20 years ago. We started the pilot project in the Valley, and it has grown to be a huge success at the provincial level. We have changed the name to a supported athlete, but we have many students in the schools across the province participating and being part of school sport, which has been really great. So that's kind of my leadership story.
That's incredible, Selena. The overcoming adversity and challenging the status quo and taking that on is truly incredible. I'm really excited to hear more as we go through. Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the organizing committee for the invite to be here. And it's definitely an honor to be in the company of so many other presenters that you have in your virtual conference. One of the things that I've realized through COVID is how much I really enjoy spending time with leaders, like all of you. So, I really miss that. So I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you here today, even though it is virtually. It's kind of the new way. So I was asked to tell my leadership story in 5 minutes. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple and tell you a bit about my experience and some of the things that I really feel have shaped my story. From a career perspective, as you heard from Melissa, I work in the sport and recreation sector, which I feel really passionate and fortunate to be able to work in a place where I would choose to spend my time there. So I do feel very fortunate to work there, but I haven't always worked in the sports sector. I actually started my career in international marketing. So I did an MBA and had a pretty successful, fun career traveling around the world doing international marketing. When I stopped being an athlete, I started coaching. And I was able to turn my hobby into a full-time job. So I worked for 5 years as the head coach at St. Evax. And really, when you are a coach as your career, your wins and your losses, your success is, broadcast in the news every day. So I think that was a piece that I think has shaped my leadership style. When I left St. Evax, I wanted to just go right back into international marketing, but I realized pretty quickly that wasn't going to happen after a five-year hiatus. So I guess I took the plunge where a lot of my volunteer experience was, and here I am. So I do like to give a bit of that context because it is a bit of a zigzag. So kind of knowing that about me and my career, a couple of things I think that have really shaped who I am and who I am as a leader. I think obviously sport. Sport has been a huge part of my life. I think, I was a young kid who was involved in everything, figure skating, soccer, volleyball. I played at a club, a community level. I was fortunate to play in university. And I think one of the big things for me as an athlete was that I wasn't very talented. So I had to overcompensate for that by working really hard. So I think for me, that really stuck out for me was that hard work piece. And I think that's really formed my leadership style. My family, I think, has been very influential to me. They're extremely supportive. I'm very lucky from that respect, but they had some key messages and still do, and that's about kind of trying your best, never quitting, and they really put a priority on thinking about how you show up and really show up. And really, my dad has a famous saying, "It's nice to be nice." So when I think about myself as a leader, I really place value on those things. I think in leadership, being that person that's going to show up and being available and accessible, I think for me, that's really important. And that hard work piece. I think the other famous line from my family was always make yourself useful. So if you don't have something to do, find something to do. Find a way to get things done. And I think for me, that's a big one. I think too many times it's easy to find all the reasons why or how something can't be done. And I think for me, leadership is finding ways, solutions, and being part of the solution to make things better. I think the next thing for me, I call them my people. And for me, these surrounding myself with these people has been really impactful. When I went to coach at St. Vax, the coaching profession is really lonely. So I found myself in a wonderful small town, but in a wonderful small town. And it was hard and lonely. But so I was forced to kind of widen my circle. I needed help. I needed lots of people's help. I couldn't do it on my own. So I think from that, I really learned the importance of being intentional about reaching out to people and learning from them and asking questions. And, that takes a lot of time and work. Lots of those people I'm still really connected with today. So I think, for me, the being intentional about taking that time to build those relationships, finding your circle, I think that's really important when I think about leadership. I think the other thing that sticks out for me in leadership is that I think too often people are trying to read about leadership styles. And I think for me as a young leader, I led how I was led. But I think as we grow in leadership, it's really important that your leadership style is really aligned and true to your values as a person, or in the tough times, people will see right through you. So for me, it's really important, to figure that out and don't try to be something you aren't. So, today I would encourage you as you're listening, hopefully, you obviously all are here, so you have a desire to always be growing and learning. And I think we can learn so much from each other with that kind of intention and time to create the space to do it. But I would challenge all of us that listen kind of with that critical ear, and when you find kind of the nuggets that stick out for you, really reflect on them and constantly be involving as a leader and growing as our experiences grow. So I think I'll leave it with that.
That's a great point to lead on, Michelle, and I appreciate that intentionality piece. So I hope everyone kind of heeds that advice today. If there's a piece that you can take, please do that. Okay, so we'll jump into the first question, and I'll bounce it over to you, Lynn, because you've taken a break and you've let your voice rest a little bit. So the first question is, what or who has been the most influential thing that has shaped your leadership style?
I think there's a number of things. When I as I mentioned, it started with sport. I had the principal of the elementary school that I was attending tell me I didn't have a choice. I was going to play sports. And I think that was one of the biggest things that shaped my ability to work with others, learn from others, and take a leadership role in sport. And I still have that passion today. It started with soccer, basketball, softball, volleyball. So I think that was probably the start of my leadership journey. And then when I think about, as I started my career in human resources, I had many great leaders to give me feedback, give me the opportunity to learn and develop and grow, and take a bit of risk. And I think that was probably, in the role that I'm in today, I think that that's probably one of the key things that shaped my style. I don't know everything. I use my team, my colleagues to help me to continue to grow and learn as a leader. And I think that when you talk about leadership style, to Michelle's point, you have so many opportunities, and there's so many people from family and friends and colleagues, teammates that you learn from as you start this journey. And I think for me, in the HR world, I was subject to many different styles of leadership. What you see today, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I was told as a young professional was that I have a great communication style. I'm approachable. People like me. I can be warm and charming. So this is me, but I learned to be patient. One of the great things that a leader said to me is Lynn, people feed off of your energy, but when your energy is fed by stress, other people follow you, and other people will become stressed and feed off of that. And for me, that was great feedback because I hadn't recognized that. So for me, it was learning patience to learn from others, to work with others, engage the team to make sure that we're taking the best approach to things. And I think that that's one of the biggest things in leadership. It's not me as the leader, it's my team. And I learned that probably with sport, but then also in business, that I don't have all the ideas, I don't have all the answers. And so when you're faced with a problem, to engage with others and lead others to have input and feedback, and look for a way forward. If I so there's a number of things I think for me, starting with sport, and then growing into business and being subject to some great leadership, great feedback, great mentors, and the different styles that each of us have.
You all are just a wealth of knowledge. I really appreciate that last part that you had said about, the team around you. Like, that's spoken like a true leader, not taking kind of the fame and glory for yourself, Lynn. I really appreciate that. And I also wanted to highlight that other kind of risk-taking piece that you had mentioned. That's so important as female leaders, I think, is we don't always feel confident in putting ourselves out there with feeling fully confident in a situation and knowing that everything is aligned. And I think you hit the nail on the head that we need to, put ourselves out there and take some risk to really get somewhere within our leadership opportunities. So thank you for mentioning that, please. Selena, did you want to kind of chime in here on what or who has been the most influential thing that has shaped your leadership style?
I think I'm going just to add to what Lynn said. I remember one coach saying to me, "You only look as good as your teammates are." And that really stuck with me. So I made sure that my teammates are really good. But and it is true. And if you don't chime into taking the talents from the people around you, then you won't get the full picture. And I think that's one big thing that I've learned as a leader, is to ask for help, and to get the people around you to rally up. And if you have more support and more people who share the same vision and share the same ideas, that idea or that vision is going to get done, and it's going to get done well, and it's going to get done quicker. So just getting everyone on board, I think as a leader, is very important. I remember starting out really at the beginning of even the teaching career. I'm like, well, this is what I want, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. And trying and taking on almost too much. And over the years, I've learned, you know what? The outcome's going to be better when you ask for help. And I've learned from many coaches, many other teachers, Renda Vandertorn, Kathy Rapius, Sue Smith. Like, these are all big names in the education world that helped me along the way. And that's been their biggest advice that they've given me is, you can't do it on your own. You have to have help from other people. So.
Thank you, Selena. That is so fantastic. I think Renda's on here today, so that's great that you had a shout out for her. Yes, learning from others is hugely important, and I appreciate that. Michelle, I see you unmuted. Do you have anything to add? Or you're good? You're good? You're good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the next question, just being aware of time. I'm going to go to you with this one, Michelle. If you could give any advice about leadership for females, what would it be?
Yeah, so I think I referenced this a little bit when I was speaking, but I think firstly, it's thinking about how you would like to be seen or described as a leader, and then really trying to understand what that looks like. I think it's easy to say, you know, I want to be, I don't know, I want to be available or compassionate, but what are the, what are the, what does that look like? What does that mean on a day-to-day basis? And because I think it's easy to say you're going to be something, but then actually doing it consistently is challenging. Your people, find your people. I would say that's a big one for me. And I would say, as much as you find your support network, I think we all need to also become that support network for someone else. I think that kind of paying it forward is really important. And, you know, you don't need to be in a leadership position to be a leader. And I think that's really important. And I think the last one for me is to really question your own assumptions. I think we make a lot of assumptions on a daily basis. And, you know, I think about my time as a coach, and, you know, an athlete comes late for the simple example, but, you know, an athlete comes late for practice. Is your first assumption that she doesn't care about the team or she's selfish? Maybe. Or is that what her teammates are thinking versus, you know, what's her family situation? What happened on the way here? What are all the other things in her life that made her late for practice? So I think, you know, making assumptions based on our own experience and observations, I think is really dangerous. So that's it.
Awesome top 3 advice. That's great, Michelle. I just noticed in the chat, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there to recognize Brenda. So Megan Conroy with Volleyball Nova Scotia said Brenda has been and continues to make a huge impact on teachers, especially females in the Valley. She really supported me and still, as a new teacher moving to the Valley from another province, someone who exhibits compassion, leadership, and a growth mindset through her entire career. Thanks, Brenda. So thanks for putting that in the chat. So great. Lynn, do you have any advice that you would like to share?
I think there's a couple of things that, you know, I touched on feedback that I received. And I often say to folks in my profession, you know, we don't always agree with, you know, whether it's part of a performance appraisal or what have you. We don't always agree with someone's feedback or their perception of us. So to Michelle's point, I think it's, you know, around, you know, your own assumptions. The feedback that I've been giving throughout my career, and I call it a gift. For me, it's about, I validate it. So I'd ask others to validate that feedback. Is this accurate? Is this something I need to work on? And then I reflect on it. So I think for me, it's reflecting on, do I need to change my behavior? Or is this something that only happens in certain situations? So that's one thing. And I'll give you an example. I talked about me being approachable and people tell me I'm a good communicator. And again, very early in my career, I had a manager I worked with. He was a colleague, actually, and he sat down with me one day and he said, Lynn, sometimes I feel like you don't listen to me. Now, folks who know me, Selena will, and Nicole will probably tell you that I'm high energy. So for me to sit still this long is a challenge for me. So my feet are moving underneath my desk. You know, I'm fidgeting with things because that's me. And I go 100 miles an hour. What you see sitting here is learned behavior from the feedback that I received. So when the manager came to me and said, I don't think that you listen to me, Lynn. Well, I'm listening, but I already have the solution. Like I'm already there. But I took that feedback, and now for me, I listen to understand, not to listen to respond, which I think is a key attribute of a leader. So often we want to, I'm listening because I want to tell you something or I want to respond to that. But I really need to listen to understand what you're saying, because I may not be getting the whole picture. And I think that that's important. And then it goes back to learning from others. And we talked a lot about team and the influence of our people, as Michelle said, and Selena talked about the team that she's worked with and those great people on it. That's where you learn. I would almost say I learned probably the most from the folks that I worked with and what worked well or didn't work well. So for me, it's feedback. It's a gift. Take it, validate it, reflect on it, make the changes that you need to, and listen to understand others, not necessarily to respond.
That's fantastic advice, Lynn, with the listening to understand, and the learned behavior, because I believe, you know, the innate reactions to high energy is very hard. So I commend you on sticking with us through this hour, and you're doing a great job. I think we'll move on to question number 3, and I'll head over to you, Selena, for it. The question is, what advice do you have to build capacity and support for other leaders?
I guess I'm taking it from the education perspective, and I can give an example. Like for me, when I say building capacity of sport, it's how many females can I get involved, or how many students can I get involved in the school in extracurricular activities or in sport. And sometimes it's just sitting down with the kids and saying, okay, what do you want? What would you like to see? And getting feedback from other people, of, because we always have our vision, and as an educator, I'm just going to be doing what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And sometimes that doesn't work because it changes. And it also changes with groups. Like, for example, we're doing host league basketball, and the past couple of years, someone else has run it, and our female numbers have gone down. So I just went up to the class and said, why don't I have as many people or females playing or girls playing? And they're like, well, when you did the games, we had the games with the boys as well, and we would just like to play with the girls. I'm like, oh, that's easy. I can do that. So our numbers increased by double this year for the females. And it's just from getting that feedback. And I think, that's with building capacity with kids, but that's also with leaders and getting people involved in initiatives that you're doing. It's just going and asking them, would you like to be involved in it? Or what's your perspective on it? And I think I'm a lot like Lynn, and sometimes I go in and I'm like, I have this energy and I want to get this done, and let's do it. And this is how I see it. And I sometimes don't stop to listen to other people's ideas. And it is so important to listen to the ideas, and not just to listen to them, but take a step back and say, oh, I know why they're saying that. And just understanding their perspective of it, because I think so many times we are just taking it from our perspective and not other people's. So I think if we take it from all the perspective, and we ask those questions and we say, okay, what do you want? I think that's something that will help us as leaders shatter the glass.
Great advice, Selena. That really resonates with me, kind of the whole nothing about us without us. So getting in there, engaging folks, and females specifically. That's fantastic. So that's all that we have kind of for our pre-panel questions. And just reminding folks that if they have any specific questions for our panelists here, that they can populate it in the chat, or they can private message one of the Shattering the Glass hosts, and we can kind of speak on behalf for you if you would like it to remain private. But we can open it up for participant questions here.
So we have one already. So this
Perfect.
one is specifically for Michelle. One of our participants wants to know, Michelle, if your circle changed as you developed as a coach, and I think we can say that developed as a leader as well. And not only if it did change, how did you initiate those relationships? How do you know who to go to and how to start that conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, when I was thinking about my response for the advice around building capacity, I think for me, it's not being afraid to rely on other people to help you figure that out, right? So it's that, I use the term kind of networking, or, not being afraid to say, to one, acknowledge that you don't know how to do it. I think that's a big thing. And then you know, someone in your circle asking them, hey, like, do you have someone, this is what I'm struggling with. What's your advice for maybe someone that I could reach out to be able to support me in this? I think one of the things that's really resonated with me over the past number of years as I try to really think more about leadership, I think often our people that are very like-minded to us, because that's comfortable and, you know, it's a lot easier. So I think, you know, being intentional about trying to bring people around us, or have conversations with people with a different life experience. So for me, mentorship has been really important. And, you know, often the people that you're mentoring look like you, their experiences are the same. So I'd encourage you to be intentional about, you know, seeking out folks that have different life experiences than you. Did I answer the question, Melissa?
I think you did. I think that was a great answer. It was a great question for sure. We do have one more in the chat. Are there any professional development for women in leadership workshops that you would recommend outside of women and sport leadership? The Canadian Women in Sport Leadership Workshop.
I can just add some comments. I think there's lots of literature and lots of stuff around leadership that's not necessarily specific to sport. And I think you know, I would encourage you to even just read, you know, reading about folks' leadership styles. I think you very quickly realize this is me, or I resonate with this, or I don't resonate with this. And then I also think kind of those, you know, any opportunity you have to listen or learn from others, I think is really valuable.
Great. And we have another shout out in the chat that I'm just going to read aloud again. I really like the celebrate piece. So to piggyback on Michelle's response, I was involved in the volleyball club when Michelle was coaching at X, and she did a great job of being open, including herself within the community and making herself available. That was huge and absolutely appreciated. So thank you, Michelle. That was from Trudy. So that's so nice. Thank you, Trudy, for taking the time to message that out. So we are going to wrap up and we're going to launch a poll here. Thank you, Selena and Lynn and Michelle, for sharing your stories. I know, and wisdom, and I'm feeling so inspired, and I hope other folks are as well. So we're asking everyone to participate in this poll again. Do you know of a female leader within a decision-making or power position, either a president of a provincial sport organization, national sport organization, community sport group, head coach, executive director, etc.? We'll give you a minute or two to answer. It's yes or no. Awesome. So the results are in. So 91% of us said yes. This is awesome. So now we're going to hold you accountable to your answers. And Janice has launched a whiteboard. So what you're going to do is participate in this whiteboard and bring up the option up top under your view options. You'll go to annotate and bring up your text. It's the second one from the left. And you will type in those female leaders that you said that you know. And if somebody has already typed in a female leader, you can stamp beside it. So put a heart, put a check. Let's see those female leader names. And I'm also asking our panelists to participate in this as well. So Michelle, Lynn, and Selena, you're welcome to kind of name out some female leaders.
Melissa, can you share how we do find it again?
Yeah, so at the top of your screen, you'll see view options, or maybe it's, yeah, I think it's top of your screen. Go down to annotate. Are you seeing that? So we're seeing lots of names populated: Crystal Watson, Amanda Silver, Michelle Wood, Michelle Aucoin, Emma Delory, Amy Walsh, Leslie Taylor, Ann Dodge, Sharon McAlpine, Ashley Brooker, Lynn Wagner, Donna Sales, everyone on this call. Somebody named all the participants on this call. I'm loving this. This is so great. Cindy Ty. Katie Edwards, Roxanne Seaman, Megan Conroy, fantastic. I'm loving seeing all these names and all the stamps beside them. So fantastic. Thank you for participating in that exercise. So great.
Melissa, while we're wrapping that up, we've got one more question.
Oh, perfect.
So while everyone's still doing that, we can put this back to the panelists. So what do you suggest in situations of leadership when you're still convincing others to invest in a sporting opportunity for women? Example, women's flag football in Ontario is offered by some secondary school athletic associations. However, it's not consistent across all associations and not offered at the Ontario provincial level. In other words, how do you engage others in the conversation and build allies?
That's a great question. I think part of it has to be, you have to be resilient. You know, I think it's find those other female leaders maybe to join your fight, for lack of a better word. I mean, I think it's trying to find those folks who are like-minded and passionate about sport. And maybe Michelle, being in that university world, would have a better comment than I. But I think it's to be resilient and not give up. Find those allies that can help to support, and whether it's through, you know, other organizations, whether it's political, whether it's through whoever you can find to join that fight. That would be my kind of take on that. Michelle, maybe you have something you would add to that.
Yeah, and I think the resilience piece is huge. I would also say there are lots of stories where we've been able to see the impact of it. So when a change is made, and when, I don't know, when a composition of a board has changed, or when a program is introduced, and the results of the impact that it's had. So I think it's almost being able to find the success stories, and unfortunately we're in a place where we have, we shouldn't have to do that, but we're in a place where we have to do that. So find the success story and be able to speak to the outcomes of what the change was and what the impact was, to try to, to your point, Lynn, find the allies and then be able to really tell the story of why it's important, I think.
And there's a bunch of resources out there. I highly recommend checking out Canadian Women in Sport. There might be something there for you too, in terms of, stats and kind of that impact piece, if you don't have that kind of within the realm that you're working with. So thank you for that late question.
Got one
and
more,
I believe
Melissa, if we've got time. We've got one more if we've got time.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question that we have here, and I guess I'll just kind of open it to the panelists to see if anyone has any answers that they would like to provide. But how do we approach men leading women and girls portions of programming to sport-specific training and activities when they're not including women as a part of the planning process and the delivery? So I guess another way to frame it is, so how do we approach them about it? But then how do we encourage men to be allies and include women in the planning process for when planning, for when women and girls are involved in the sports and the activities that they're planning? So Michelle, do you have any, I guess, tips or insight of how to approach men about it or anything that way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my career has been filled with it. Certainly in the sport that I coached, I would say it's not the same now as it would have been 20 years ago, or I had the good fortune to coach with a national team that had a staff of 8 people, and I was the only female. So I think it's not easy by any means. I think Lynn spoke to kind of the resilience piece. I think we need to, it's really hard. I think we need to have confidence in our abilities and in our contributions, and what we can add to the conversation. Unfortunately, we have to be able to earn their respect. So, that phrase I use, kind of make yourself useful. For me, when I was in that environment with those coaches, I tried to think ahead of all of the things that might be needed, so that how could I very quickly show that I brought value to the situation. So I think, how kind of approaching it from that way, what are the things I can be doing to add value to this situation? Should we need to be doing that? No, we shouldn't. I'm not saying that that's appropriate, but I think, we have to be prepared to kind of be resilient and keep pressing, and even ask, straight up ask, what, I want to be involved, express your desire, have the conversation of what you need to be doing to be included in those conversations.
Great. Selena, did you have anything to add there?
It was pretty much what Michelle was saying, but also the way you approach the individuals as well. Like sometimes they are so used to doing what they've done, and just saying, did you ever think of doing it this way? Or just saying, giving it as a specific example to a specific athlete. Like, do you know that this athlete is coming from this lens and not the lens that you're looking through. So just getting them to sit back and see what lens we need to look at each particular athlete or team really does add to the conversation. I know I've had conversations with coaches here with that, and they just wouldn't know the background of the student or of the athlete. And I think having the background and knowing those little details does add a lot to how we should deal with individuals when we're coaching.
Fantastic. Okay. So keeping an eye on the time and trying to be respectful of our panelists and our participants to keep on time. We have one closing poll left to kind of engage you to see what your satisfaction was with the session, so we can continue to learn as a committee to make the following sessions even better. So if you could participate in this poll as well, we would greatly appreciate that. And we'll let you have that open for a couple minutes.
I've also populated a link in the chat box that you can actually just click on. That's a more detailed survey for us. We're trying to do it after every session just to make sure that we're tracking how we're doing and making each session a little bit smoother than the last. So if you have 5 minutes after this would be much appreciated.
Thanks, Janice. Fantastic. Thank you for participating in that poll. So just as a closing and a reminder, we do have some other sessions related to our virtual conference. We've spread it out over a couple weeks. Our next session is December 1st, another lunch and learn. So we'll kind of open it up around noon, but really kick off around 10 after to allow you to kind of grab a bite to eat. And we have Jordan Smith, who is the Active Living Coordinator with Goosap First Nation, come in to talk about a holistic approach to building female leadership. We're excited to have Jordan. It's kind of a part two, really good energy around her session last year at Millbrook. So we're really excited about that. Kind of as another opportunity, not necessarily connected to Shattering the Glass, but Canadian Women in Sport Leadership Workshop around effective communication happening December 3rd in the evening, 7 until 8:30. So you can register on the locker, you can search for it, register there and attend that session. And yeah. Keep an eye out for Valley Female Leadership Network. We're holding a variety up until April, which is great. And then our third and final installment of the breakout sessions is happening December 8th. It's an evening session. We have two speakers, Joy Galloway-Jones and Megan McEachran, talking about growing community through leadership. So we're really excited to invite them into our space here virtually. And then December 12th, we close with a panel, creating leadership opportunities for all females. And our panelists come from a wide variety of backgrounds and communities throughout Nova Scotia. And Crystal Watson, the Executive Director with Recreation Nova Scotia, will be moderating that. So thank you, see you later, and hopefully see you back here on December 1st. Thank you so much to Michelle, Lynn, and Selena for joining us today. It was great to have a fantastic conversation with you.